morning. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I am here from the Silicon Valley Labs in California. One fact that I wanted to share was I was actually born in the city of Jaipur. So, it's a pretty nostalgic feeling for me to be here. So I've come to the city almost after 30 years, but it brings a lot of joy for me to be here, and it's an honor to spend some time with all of you talking about big data. So I've been leading the big data charter at IBM since about 2010. That time, now everybody is talking about big data, but back when we started, we were still trying to define what it is, learn from a lot of our customers, what kind of challenges are they facing, back about 4 years, and where do they see themselves going? So what kind of technologies do we need to provide? And what I'll share with you today is, some of this work that we've done in the past 4 years. So before we get started, I was just curious that how many of your clients already have some kind of a big data project that is, either they're playing with experimenting, or they are already, far into deployment. So maybe just a show of hands. Okay, that's good. Okay. So, I'll kind of give you an overview, and then I'm going to be around so we can have more discussion. I'm also available for one-on-one meetings, so we can go deeper if it's needed. Now, from the standpoint of big data comes from a lot of different sources. We've traditionally been dealing with a lot of transactional data or application data, and doing mining that data, doing business intelligence on that data, gaining insights from that data to make better decisions. And that has been happening in every enterprise. So it's not that the traditional data is also growing. The number of transactions, the size of the application data itself has grown phenomenally. But to gain new kinds of insights, it's become really important that the enterprises are not just getting their arms around transactional and application data, but they are also embracing new sources of data. Like, there is obviously a lot of information that is in social data, for example, right? Whether it is Twitter or blogs or things that people are sharing, especially when it comes to customers or understanding your consumers, which may not be captured in the transactional data that the enterprises are dealing with. So, bringing in social data, which is a lot of semi-structured, unstructured text kind of data, and adding to that, there is also a lot of text or content that may be stored inside the enterprise. So when we talk about big data, it is about all these different sources of data. It's transactional application data, it is social data, it is content repositories, it is also log data, for example, right? There is, the world is so instrumented today that everything is generating data and it's getting logged. And there is a wealth of information that is hiding in that log data, which also needs to be harnessed. So when we look at all these different sources of data, there is, this has kind of ushered a new era of computing, where to make the right business decisions, information from everywhere needs to be brought in together. Which is not to say that all the data needs to move and be in one central location, but to make the right business decisions, one has to be able to access all of this information, does not matter where it resides. Just to share some numbers, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, right? If you look at the digital world today, right, comprising of, videos and digital photographs, and that data itself, that digital world is expected to grow about 44 times by the year 2020. I mean, that is a lot of information, and there is insights that have to be gained from that. Now, and even the complexity in the IT, every year when we talk to our customers, I'm sure you have similar experiences as you are dealing with the enterprises, that the complexity keeps doubling every year, right? And the scale that is needed to handle all of this, right? If we just look at the number of mobile devices, right? It's expected to grow to about 10 billion by the year 2020. Even now, there are about over 1 trillion devices, and each one of these is generating data. Just the number of people today that are connected, in some way, shape, or form onto the internet is huge, right? Like if you look at just, again, some numbers, 2 billion of the 7 billion people that reside in the world are connected to the internet, which means that everything that they are doing, every transaction, every click, every website that they are browsing, there is information that they are giving and generating, which depending on, again, if it's a retail industry, if it is telecommunications, there is information in there which would be worth capturing. Now, when we look at this kind of data, which is structured, semi-structured, unstructured, the volumes are huge. When we were in the warehouse world, it was pretty typical that warehouses would be, under 50 terabytes is where majority of the warehouses, the size would kind of be there. Even a few terabytes is a lot of data. So now there's a starting point where people start with hundreds of terabytes of data, going up to petabytes of data. So the volumes are certainly very high. The variety of the data is not just structured data. There's semi-structured, unstructured data. We are very used to, structured data which has a very fixed schema, so we know how to store it. But the semi-structured, unstructured data, there is no schema to this data. So, how do you manage and analyze this data? So when we look at all this, the traditional or the conventional methods of compute and technology are not sufficient to help analyze this data. And if you want to store this petabytes of data, it also has to be done in a cost-effective manner, right? Putting all this data in your traditional warehouses, not only will the cost go through the roof, the performance would degrade tremendously. So those traditional methods, it's not like I'm saying those go away, but those need to be augmented with new types of compute, new types of technologies, so that customers don't have to make a decision upfront what data to store. And so I'll share some of the technologies that are now available, which go beyond what we've been using and dealing with to deal with data. Now, from IBM's standpoint, and this is something that has been pretty much now adopted by a lot of even our competitors, that this is the architecture that we put together in, I would say, about 2011. So that time we worked with a lot of customers that were bringing in these different types of data in the enterprise. And there's an architecture that was needed to kind of explain to these customers that, how do you manage, how do you get your arms around all of this data? So when we look at this, what you see, sort of that yellow box here, which is the, what is called as the landing or the archiving zone. People will refer to it as the data lake. This is sort of the center or the hub of this big data platform. Now, this, you'll hear terms like data lake, landing zone, archiving zone, and what this sort of zone represents is that you can bring in any kind of data in this landing zone. It could be as elemental as text, it could be audio, video, so any kind of structured, semi-structured, unstructured data could land in this particular zone. And what you see around it, I don't know how the visibility is at the back, but the surrounding components that you have and the arrows that you see going back and forth, think of this as that this is where all the data is landing, and the components around it are the components that can suck data from it or push data into it, right? So, and what are these components here? These components are things like SQL engines, so your traditional warehouses, whether it's in appliance form factor or otherwise. These could be analytic engines. These could be engines which are helping ingest data, that is moving data into this landing zone. And it's a sort of like a two-way street here, that as in the enterprises, what you see on the left-hand side are all the different types of data sources, which are structured, semi-structured, unstructured. All of that data lands in the landing zone, and then there are these value-added components around it to take data from it, process it, and turn it into actionable insights. The key of this particular architecture that you see, this slide, is that there is a lot, the cornerstone of this architecture, I would say, is that it is a very cohesive architecture. And there are two key aspects that make this architecture very cohesive. One is that all the different components that you see here, whether it is your landing zone, whether it is your real-time processing capabilities or the warehousing capabilities, there is seamless access to data by all the components, which is that once the data comes to the landing zone, you can run very low-level jobs like MapReduce on top of that data. You can run very high-level SQL queries on that data. If your applications are very batch-oriented, that data can be provided to those batch-oriented applications by accessing the data from disk. If the applications are interactive, iterative, analytic applications, then that data can be provided by keeping it in memory. So, but it's the same data, right? It's not like we are making 50 different copies of the data. So all these different applications are working off of the same big data platform, but they are getting access to this data in the way it's needed so that they are performing at the right level. So this is one very key aspect of this architecture. The second thing that makes this very cohesive is that all of these different zones, they interoperate with each other. So if we take one example, right, that if you look at, say, text data is ingested, it lands in this archiving zone. Now, text on its own is not something that can be analyzed. So you need text analytics or information extraction kind of capabilities from it to get the right information extracted from it. Now, that information is extracted, and you can run SQL transformations to do heavy-duty transformations on that data. That same data could then be piped into machine learning algorithms. Predictive models can be built. And those models can be fed back so that as more data is coming in, those models are scored to predict based on what that model was built for. The models could be built to, to detect fraud in transactions. These models could be built to determine customer attrition, customer churn, all kinds of things. But it's like the data is, think of it as it's flowing in all of these systems. The various components are doing whatever processing they are best designed to do, but the data is never really leaving this ecosystem. And as all of this gets done, then there is different kinds of capabilities that are available which really help with exploration of this data. Like when we say that all of this data is landing in the landing zone, or what we call as a data lake, how do you even know what is in this data, right? It's very easy to push everything in here, but how do we know what is in there? So there are exploration and discovery tools which come with the platform, which show you, like, what do you have in a meaningful way, right? Like, it could be a spreadsheet view, it could be visually looking at, graphically, how do you explore that, it tells you some information about the data. Of course, once that is done, there is a lot of descriptive kind of analytics that can be done. We'll talk about some of those capabilities that are available, which tells you that, what are the things that have happened in the past. So do analysis by looking in the rear view mirror. Then there is predictive models that can be done, which is like what's going to happen in the future. Then, of course, it is prescriptive analytics that, what are the best outcomes that can be recommended in terms of next best action and like for the customers. And then, of course, the eventual goal, I know there was a session yesterday on Watson, is all around that, how do you learn as you're getting more and more data? How do you learn and make your system smarter such that, dynamically you're figuring out, what are the challenges and how do you solve them? So which is all around cognitive computing. But all of this is possible, again, with a reference architecture like this. So we had proposed this in 2011, and I remember when, we have a conference in Las Vegas, which used to be called Information on Demand. So that's the first time I had put this over there. And after that, we had an event at UC Berkeley, which is where we had invited, it was a UC Berkeley event, and they had over 1,500 CIOs there. And the CIO of Intel actually took a picture of this and tweeted it as a reference architecture, which the CIOs, the enterprises have to be looking at, so that they are really developing this big data platform for the needs not just of today, but really for the years to come. I'm sure you've all would vouch for that. IT complexity gets worse if things are not planned ahead of time. So treat this as sort of like a blueprint that we developed. And the key part here is that not all the different pieces of technology are needed up front, but things can be added. It's a plug and play kind of an architecture. So things can be added based on the kind of workloads, the kind of applications that one is developing or deploying. Just to get into a little tiny more detail here, I mean, one can spend a couple of days just going through the deeper dive of this architecture. But when we look at the characteristics of the landing zone, this is where, this is based on where the data is actually stored in a file system. So given that it's stored in the file system, you can store, like I was saying, structured, semi-structured, unstructured data. Data is stored in its raw format. So the transformations do not happen as the data is being stored. So, we preserve the fidelity of the data. The transformations would happen once the applications are built on leveraging this data. Then there are obviously capabilities here. Like I said, if you're bringing in text, to query that text has to read some kind of a structured form. Otherwise, how do you access information from it? So there are text analytics capabilities that come with this. once everything reaches, a structured form, then obviously SQL is the best way to query and access that. So we have SQL support on this landing zone. So, as you are accessing data from this, the same SQL queries could also federate and bring in data from your existing warehouses or other, database kind of repositories. And, there is capabilities like SPSS or SAS can be used to build predictive models. With all of this data, the models could be scored here. You could, test those models. And what is being done here is that, traditionally in the past, when we have done model building, it has been that it gets tested against a sample size of the data. Now here, you have access to all of the data. So it gets, the quality of the models themselves increase. It gets better because the testing is happening on all of the data as opposed to a subset of the data. So it's easier to identify, are there additional dimensions or attributes which need to be added to those predictive models so that there is a good fit. And, as customer churn and fraud needs to be predicted, it needs to be accurate. So that's sort of this landing zone. Now, this is where a lot of the applications that are running are still very batch-oriented, right? It's still historical analysis. There is a class of applications where data has to be analyzed or processed as it is getting generated. So for that, we have what we call as the real-time analytics. And in the next couple of slides, I'll mention some of the products that represent these different blocks that we have here. And that is, again, the real-time capabilities provide that as data is streaming in, again, it could be structured, semi-structured, unstructured data. It is processed, it is filtered, different streams could be correlated. There is, as you have developed predictive models, those could be scored in real time. A lot of the telcos to predict customer churn build those models, test those models by having data here or in the warehouse. But, as they have to process call detail records, which may indicate that there's a customer that is going to churn, then that processing needs to happen in real time, right? Because by the time the data lands here or in your warehouse, and you run the customer churn model and figure out that the customer is going to churn, there would be a lapse time of maybe 3 weeks by the time the customer has churned and might churn again. But if that can be determined in real time, then some action can be taken to prevent the customer from churning. So that's one example of where the real-time capabilities become really important. I mean, there are many use cases that we have and success stories. If you go on the IBM site and search for Infosphere Streams is the product, you will see a lot of, in different industries, how these real-time capabilities have been used. Then, of course, the world of warehouse and appliances is something that's where all the transactional data has been mined to do traditional BI reporting as well as building predictive models. Now, it's not like that world goes away because, for certain kind of reports, it's still, you need these high performance warehouses. So the key, again, like I had said, was that it's important that all of this interoperates with each other, right? And it's not one or the other. So you'll hear things like a logical data warehouse or the next generation of enterprise data warehouse. Now, when people talk about that, or when analysts talk about that, or when customers say that, how does our warehouse need to evolve So this is the kind of discussion that we've had with many customers, that this is how this evolution has to happen. And there are obviously a lot of products that we could cover. I wanted to bring up two, which have been sort of our new offerings. One is IBM Big Insights. Now this is an offering which, when we looked at the landing area or the analytics zone, so which product is helping you build that? That is Big Insights. And what this offers is that there's a lot of work that has happened in the open source community, which has brought, technologies like Hadoop. I don't know how many people have dealt with any project or have clients that are now talking about bringing in Hadoop in the enterprise. Maybe a show of hands, okay. So, and there is a lot of uptake of Hadoop MapReduce. I mean, I work with also a lot of the CIOs, the decision makers, the IT departments, as they are looking at, how does, the traditional warehouse, how is it going to evolve? So we see Hadoop in almost every enterprise, right? So what we've done is we have embraced Apache Hadoop, and we have built capabilities on top to make it enterprise ready. So I've mentioned some of the capabilities here. These are to do with, Apache Hadoop has its own file system. It's called HDFS. But as enterprises are, putting not just experimental kind of applications, but applications in production on this landing zone, then they need a more robust file system. They need a POSIX compliant file system. They need a file system where their data can be encrypted, it's secured. They need disaster recovery for that file system. So, we provide options that we have, GPFS, which we provide as a part of Big Insights for customers that are going in production. They prefer to pick that. Same thing for, like I was saying, there's a lot of that data that lands here. And having the ability to access the structured data with SQL capabilities is very important. So we provide SQL on Hadoop. And now, in the traditional world of warehouses, what used to happen was that data was mined in the warehouses. But if there is analytics that had to be done on that data, that would be moved to something like SPSS or SAS. Now with big data, right, when we are talking about terabytes, hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of data, it is almost impossible for you to move all of that data to where the analytic function resides. So it's very important to have analytic capabilities that are happening in place where the data is. So you will hear things like in Hadoop analytics. So we provide the same kind of statistical and predictive modeling capabilities happening in place in Big Insights, which is not to say that one cannot leverage the existing investment that is there in things like SPSS and SAS. That still makes sense for maybe certain kinds of data that you can move to where the analytic function is. But where it's not possible to move, we have in place analytic capabilities. And then of course, R is another open source statistical and predictive modeling language, which is gaining a lot of traction as well. So we provide capabilities to build models in R and scale them out using Hadoop MapReduce. Again, there are lots of details, but I just wanted to at least put one chart which, so that if you're thinking of what is IBM doing in the Hadoop open source space, this is a pretty major area of investment for us. Now in terms of, another new capability that we have is called Infosphere Streams. So like I was saying, this is really where the streams of data are coming in real time. So let's say, when you ask, so when you have warehouses, right, the data is fixed there. You run the SQL queries, you get the answer. Then maybe in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if the data changes, you run the SQL query, you may get, first you were getting maybe 1,000 rows, now you may get 1,000,000 rows. But in this case, this is absolutely where we say it's not near real time, it is real time. So if a query was being asked, you would get different answers based on the data that is coming in. And there are capabilities that you can filter information, extract information. These could be many different streams of data that are coming in. We can correlate information from these different streams of data. And based on the rules that are defined, it leads to, actionable insights. Same thing, like when you build, say, predictive models, those could be scored in real time, where, like I had mentioned earlier, an example of, is the customer going to churn or not? If there are call detail records that are coming in, there may be other kinds of data as well that have to be analyzed, so that in real time one can say, is the customer going to churn or not? Then these are the kind of capabilities that help. There are many different use cases of big data, but these are the 5 that have emerged. And it has been around exploring, like, what is in this data. Log data, people have petabytes of log data. Just exploring, searching log data reveals, very interesting information. Same thing around, everybody is trying to understand, gain better insights into the customer. So building a 360-degree view or a holistic view of the customer, whether it's in the retail side, whether it's in the automotive industry, whether it is healthcare, where people are trying to understand their patients better, but getting a complete view of the customer is now possible because you're looking at beyond just that structured data, right? So to make these use cases possible, you need more than just the structured data. I'll not get into the details of all of these use cases, but this is one example of, we have about, 5 major automotive players worldwide that have deployed the big data platform that I had shown to you earlier, where they're capturing all the data about the vehicles, right from the standpoint of, when there's a blueprint of the vehicle, till when there is, then there are the different parts that are needed to build the vehicle, information about that, then when the parts are on the assembly line to build the vehicle, then when the vehicle or the car is actually on the road, there is sensor data, there is onboard computers, and all of that data has to be gathered to do different, debug if there are any kinds of anomalies that are found in this. So you'll hear of something called connected vehicles. And, a lot of it from those cars is going to the data center. And so if there is an accident, right, then how does the data center offer services to the, to get services for the vehicle owner who's had the accident, to provide services to the city that, this is the area that should be blocked off. No other, drivers should be coming in that area because, there's an accident that has happened. And it's not just about that, but there is telematics data that is being gathered so that insurance industries get better insights into the driving behavior of the drivers. Do they, for example, accelerate and decelerate the car very quickly? So there is, lot of these insights which are making it, where Insurance is provided based on driving behavior. It is provided based on what the driving habits are like. It's based on, are you a good driver or a bad driver? So, and all of this is really coming from as people are driving their cars. So, this is a connected vehicle initiative which, makes use of many different capabilities from IBM. Streams and Big Insights are two of them, but there are others. Now, we've all seen that, every business is trying to understand their customer better. They are, the world is really moving from micro-segmentation to that segment of one, which is that the businesses are not just interested in understanding customers at a micro-segment level, but they want to understand each one of us and figure out that, what are the right kind of products and services that should be offered. Are you happy with their product? What is your sentiment towards their product? What can they do to improve that sentiment? So which is all around segment of one. So the thing about micro-segmentation is a thing of the past. Now it is all about the individual customer. Then, we were talking about that IT has become very complex. So if you look at, right, that this is for a large financial sector customer, we kind of gathered that, if you, I don't know, for people who, if you can't see at the back, right, there are 250,000 managed firewalls, right, in one FSS account. 30,000 network devices, right? I mean, these are just some of the assets and the data that is being produced here. And there is, 1.5 to 2 terabyte per month of data that they have to analyze to see if there are any security-related glitches. So again, for these kind of implementations, you cannot just go with conventional that let me put all of this in the warehouse. You need something which is broader than that so that the right kind of analytics can be done. I will use this as the last example. This is work that IBM did with University of Ontario in Toronto, and where if you look at the World Health Organization, the data that they provide, there are close to 15 million premature babies that are born every year. And of those, 1 million die within the first 30 days. And what is the cause of that death? It's not that they are not getting any medical attention. They are actually in ICUs. And there is a lot of information that is gathered about them. So when we did this work with University of Ontario, there's about, I'm just rounding it up as 1,000 pieces of information per second that is gathered about a newborn baby. These are things like heart rate, pulse rate, KPIs like that. Now it's very difficult for a doctor or a nurse on duty to be able to analyze this 1,000 pieces of information per second. So clearly there is technology that is needed here, which is what we did with them. And what this resulted in was that they were able to predict the onset of an infection in a newborn baby 24 hours in advance. Now that 24-hour of runway, when a doctor or a nurse gets that, then obviously the baby can be cured. So big data technologies is not just about giving customers the right promotions and offers to drive sales, but it is really having a profound impact on our lives in terms of saving lives, in terms of, we have a whole smarter city initiatives, looking at traffic congestion problems, looking at water quality problems. All of those are big data use cases. So, obviously what we are offering is that you can bring in all kinds of data. There is the right technology to manage, store in a cost-effective way all of this data. There are analytic capabilities that are available to do descriptive, predictive kind of analytics. And the use cases that we see is every industry is leveraging this data to solve business problems that they could not solve before. Analysts are rating IBM high, like what you see on the right-hand side, in all the different aspects of big data. And we have a number of partners. Our ecosystem is very big in terms of applications that are being built on top of IBM's big data platform. Like the last speaker was saying, that we provide tremendous help in terms of, we have something called the Big Data University. I know it says here that I think we have over 200,000 customers, business partners, students learning about this technology. It's all available for free. There are tutorials available both around the technology as well as around the use cases. And there is a YouTube channel on IBM's big data where one can see what the customers are, how they are putting it to use. So those are not just marketing kind of commercials, but actual implementations that people have done, what technology has worked for them and how. So I would encourage all of you to take a look at that if there is interest in this space. And anything else that I could answer for you. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day and for the break. I know I have gone over time, sorry about that, just wanted to share what we've done, and this is a very critical initiative for us. The platform picture that you saw, all of that could be on-prem, or we also have customers that are now implementing parts of that on software. So it's not just that everything is on-prem. There is availability of that. Again, you could decide what makes sense for you to have, or your clients to have in their own data center, what makes sense for it to be on the cloud. There is a hybrid approach that people are also using. So it's very possible to make that architecture work by thinking of completely on-prem, completely on cloud, or a hybrid approach. Thank you very much.